Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We still continue with the topic of simple interest, and previously we did example 1.4. Now I'm looking forward in doing the next three examples within a period or a time of 45 minutes. We were about to focus on the future value of an amount borrowed or future value of the amount that is invested, which is denoted as sum accumulated. It first says the sum of the principal plus, remember the principal is the present value, which is denoted as A, plus the interest is called the amount. Remember the interest is the bigger I, which is the interest amount that is expected to be received, is called an amount. Or else it is called sum accumulated, which is denoted by S, or we can call it the future value. So if I say future value or sum accumulated, know that I speak of the same thing, and I've been saying this also before. Now there is a formula on how to calculate the future value, which is sum accumulated is equal to the amount that was invested plus the interest. Let us wait about that one, just erase it so far. Now if we say the amount that we have invested plus the interest, this will give us the future value of the amount that was invested. And because we know that the interest calculation is equal to A times I times N, that is the formula I brought to your attention in the beginning in terms of the calculation of the interest amount. We said that interest is equal to amount invested times by the interest rate times by N, which is the period the amount is invested. So now that will give us the interest amount. Now if we say the amount that is invested plus the interest is equal to the future value or sum accumulated, then we can expand further and say now the interest is equal to A times by I times by N. So, but don't worry much again about the derivative of the formula or how you can derive the formula. That is why we have A plus I plus A is to 1 plus I times N, which equals A is to 1 plus I times N. And where this coming from, what we do, we look for the like terms or this alphabet that are the same, and we take one of them outside of the brackets, and that is on the math side, and I don't want to dwell on the mathematical side. What is important for you is to know that the sum accumulated is equal to amount invested plus interest. The in-between part, which is also in your handout, is something that you need not to worry about. But the last part, you need to master that sum accumulated is equal to the amount invested is to 1 plus I times by N. That is the formula. Remember, we use this formula depending on the information that we are provided. That means if we are provided with the amount that was invested, which is the principal amount, if we do have principal amount and we do have interest rate and we do have N, then we can use this formula to calculate sum accumulated or the future value of the amount that was invested. Now, if we do have the amount that was invested and we know the interest amount that was earned, then we just say the amount that was invested plus the interest will give us the future value. So now it will depend on the information that we are provided in terms of what do we do. So that is the basics of how to calculate the future value, and I will be now focusing on the calculation of the future value in the next example. It says again, if we know any three, which is sum accumulated, amount invested, interest, or N, we can find the fourth unknown with the help of the formula. the formula that says sum accumulated equals A is to 1 plus I times by n. That means, again, if we know the future value and we know the interest and we know n, then we can calculate the amount that was invested. And again, if we know the future value and we know the amount that was invested and we know n, we can calculate the interest. And again, if we know the future value, we know the amount invested, we know the interest, then we can calculate n, which is the period in which the amount has been invested for. So the minute we know any of the three, we can calculate the unknown. And now this example that follows will be focusing on that. There's a note that we need to take into account that says the present value of an amount refers to the principal amount that must be invested. The present value is the principal amount. So when I speak of the present value, you know that is the principal amount, and we talked about that very much. Then now we go to the next part, which is example now number 1.5. I'm planning to do these three examples and be done with them in this recording. It's not very long examples. Then now it says completing this is the amount that must be invested presently in order to obtain the amount in the future, which is the future value. So present value is the amount that we have in the beginning, then future value is the amount that we have at the end of the investment amount or the investment period. Then now we go to example 1.5, and example 1.5 says to us that Mr. Jones invested a sum of money, and the minute we say that he invested sum of money, that is the present value, which is the amount invested for 4 months at 4.5% per annum. Please take note of the fact that the interest rate is per annum, and this is very important to highlight. You need to know if your interest rate is per annum or is per month. So now if it's per annum, meaning it is for the year, that means our n must also be in years. Then it says, and he receives 253 rand 75 cents back. So now this is the amount that he receives in the future, which is the future value or the sum accumulated. So this is the future value that he receives later on, or sum accumulated. But we don't know how much he invested, but we know that there is an amount that he invested. Then it says calculate the present value of the amount that was investment or of the investment. That means now we have to go to the formula, because what do we have here is sum accumulated, where the formula says sum accumulated equals amount invested is to 1 plus I times by n. I said worry not about how to derive the formula, but you just need to memorize the formula. Now we are now looking at calculating the amount that was invested. And please note that our n is in months, but our n must be converted to be in years, because the interest is in years. That means, in other terms, our n is dependent on the interest. Our n is dependent on the interest. If the interest is per month, then n must also be in months. If the interest is in years, then n must also be in years. So now that means, because we do have part of this formula, which is the sum accumulated formula, we can say sum accumulated equals A is to 1 plus I n, which is I times by n. Then we do have a substitute of this. Then let us substitute, and we say our sum accumulated is 253 rand 75 cents, which equals amount that was invested is the one that we're looking for. We don't know, but we know that a sum of money was invested, and that's what we are looking for now. Open brackets 1, this is 1, plus our interest, it is 0.045. Remember, I'm just using the decimals because we dealt with the decimals in the first chapter of numeracy. So please go there and master how to convert a percentage into a decimal. Otherwise, it is 4.5 divided by 100. If we say 4.5 divided by 100, we'll get 0.045. So, but we can still say plus 4.5 over 100. Then we multiply this by n, and our n is in month, and it must be converted to years. Divide by 12. Why? Because our interest is per annum. So now we have to first deal with the side which is the brackets of. Remember, BODMAS, we first deal with the brackets of. Then we say 1 plus 0.045 times by 4 divided by 12. Then this will be 253.75 equals 1.015a. It doesn't matter if you say a something, it doesn't matter, as long as you start you have the numbers where they're supposed to be placed. Then now what do we need to do? We need to divide by 1.015 because we are looking for the amount that was invested. Then we say divide by 1.015. This cancel this. Whatever we do on the left, we also do it on the right hand side. Then we say divide by 1.015. So now meaning we have to say 253.75 divide by 1.015. Then we get an amount of 250. That means the amount that was invested, which is the present value, it is 250 rands. That is the amount that was initially invested. That means we invested 250 for a period of 4 months and it became 253 rand 75 cents. Then again, now another information that I need to bring across your mind is the fact that we can also calculate the interest that was earned, meaning the interest that was earned, it is sum accumulated minus a, meaning future value minus present value. In this case, the interest that would have been earned on this investment will be 253 rand 75 cents minus 250. Therefore, now we can get to 3 rand 75 cents. Is 3 rand 75 cents. That will be the interest that would have been earned on this investment. Is only a small 3 rand 75 cents. Then now this is the interest calculation in the case where you have already we have given some accumulated or calculated then the present value that will give you the interest amount. And remember, we know that the initial formula to calculate interest equals a times by I times by n. So if we want, we can still verify if this interest gives us the same when we use the normal formula. Amount invested is 250 times by the interest rate 0.045 times by our n, which is 4 over 12. Let us just verify that and see if do we get the same figure. 250 times by 0.045 times by 4 over 12, and we get the same 3 rand 75 cents. So now either way, depending on the information that is provided to you, you will always get to the same accurate or correct answers. That was example 1.5. Calculating the present value given sum accumulated and given n and given the interest per annum, and n have to be converted to be per annum or annual equivalent, or in the same time frame as the interest. It says in 1.6 now, another lovely example in preparation for your task number 1 and also your upcoming first formal assessment. It says, suppose a person makes 2 investments, both at simply interest. The one sum is 310. That means this person invested how many? two investments, and both of these investments are at simply interest, not at a compound interest that we'll deal with later on. It says the one sum is 3,010 rand. That means this is the first present value, or the amount that was invested, at 11.5%. So we know the interest 11.5%, and that is per annum if there is no emphasis on that. So please assume that to be per annum. When it's per month, it will be clearly stated. And the other sum, which is 1,950, meaning there was another amount that he invested because there were two investments, and that is the present value again, amounted to 1,950. But we don't know the interest for this one because there is a full stop. But we know that the first investment was invested at 11.5% of the interest, and the second investment is 1,950. We don't know the interest rate for the second investment. Then it says the first investment was invested for a period of 3 years. So that means this amount of 3,010 was invested at 11.5% for a period of 3 years. Now it says, and the second investment was invested for a period of 2.5 years. And once again, we don't know the interest rate the second investment earned. Now remember, when it says this person had two investments, it does not mean that they were invested in the same company. That is why they are likely not to earn the same interest rate. One might be invested in another company, another one invested in another company at the different interest rates. So now we're still concerned about the interest rate that was earned on the second investment. But further information is telling us that if the total interest earned is 1,477 rand 20 cents, take note, if the total, that means the interest that is earned on investment number 1 and interest earned on investment number 2, in total it is how much? It is 1,477 rand 20 cents. Then we are required to calculate the interest rate at which the second sum is invested. And again, now we are required to calculate the interest rate on which the second investment was invested. Now, it is very important to know how to get to what you are given. So now that means we are given the interest that was earned for both of the investments. Remember, the interest in this case, it is the interest on investment number 1 plus the interest on investment number 2 is equal to 1,477 rand 20 cents. This is what this means. It means the interest on the first investment and the interest on the second investment, interest amount not percentage, is equal to 1,477 rand 20 cents. So that is the interest earned. Now we need to expand further this formula because we know how to calculate the interest amount and interest amount for any of the investment. We know the formula says interest equals A times by I times by N. So now that means we can substitute the interest, which is one figure, into the formula and substitute this I into the formula, because that is the same way on how to calculate the interest amount. Why do we have to do this? Is because we are looking for the interest rate that was earned on the second investment. So now if we use this formula on how to calculate the interest, we will be able to substitute all the unknowns that we have, considering the fact that we are told the interest was earned for both investments, which is interest on the first investment plus interest on the second investment equals 1,477 rand 20 cents. So now that means we can say A times I times N plus A times I times N equals 1,477 rand 20 cents. So we can put brackets here and we put brackets here. So now I can continue with my calculations now. The amount that was invested in the first investment is 3,010 rand. The interest is 0.115, which is 11.5%. Remember, I can say multiply by 11.5 over 100 times by 3, because the first investment was invested for a period of 3 years. So I multiply by 3. Then I say plus amount invested in the second investment, it is 1,950. Then we multiply this by n, because it was invested for a period of 2.5 years. Remember, I'm starting with n because I am looking for the unknown, which is the interest. That I is the unknown. But we know that all this is equal to 1,477 rand 20 cents. Remember now, this is the formula on calculating the interest on the first investment plus the formula on calculating the interest on the second investment, which gives us the total interest that was earned for both of the investment. Therefore, now we just need to deal with the calculations. 3,010 times by 0.115 times by 3 years will give us a total of 1,038 rand 45 cents, meaning this is the interest that was earned on the first investment. Then if we say minus 1,477.20, we already get interest that was earned on the second investment. Why? Because this is the total interest that was earned on both of the investments, meaning interest in terms of the amount that was earned on the second investment, we know that it is 438.75. And I can go further with this amount in terms of how now you can venture into calculating the interest rate for the second investment, because we know the other formula that says I is equal to interest over A times by N. So at this point in time, we can do that and say A times by N, because we know our N. Let me just verify this one again. We say 438.75. Then we divide by 1,950 times by our N is 2.5. Now let me just do this now. We say divide by, open brackets, 1,950 times by 2.5. We close brackets. We say equal. Then we multiply this by 100. We get 9%. Ignore the negative, just that the previous number was negative. We can see that our interest is equal to 9%. That is just my other way of calculating, and I'm linking now what I'm doing with what we did previously. I just want to erase it and show you why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I want you to have a comprehensive thinking on whatever you do at all times. Remember, we said in the beginning that you have a formula that you can use to calculate the interest rate, and the minute you know the interest amount, and you have A and you have N, so this is what I did exactly. Now in your notes, it is calculated in the very formal way, the way that I will be doing, but don't limit yourself. Open up your mind in terms of the calculation and use your intelligence as much as you can. So for me, after I got this interest, which I know is for the first investment, then there's no need for me to be taking that long route, crossing over the equal sign, because I know that I can have the interest amount for this investment. Then if I have the interest for this investment, then I'm done. I can immediately calculate the interest rate. Now let us still continue, otherwise just to observe the protocol for this question. It says 1,950 times by 2.5. Then it will be 4,875 I. Remember, I is still what we are looking for, equals 1,477 rand 20 cents. Then now we continue on that same note. Then now what do? We say now we have this unknown. Therefore now we need to take this 1,000 over the equal sign, and when we do so, that will become negative. So now what do? We say on this left hand side we will be left only with 4,875. So we have 4,875 I equals 1,477.20 minus 1,038 rand 45 cents. That means this goes over the equal sign and becomes negative. That is what exactly I've done there. Then I've left this one over the same side it was in before. So now let me continue on that same note. I know that will erase itself. So now what do? We say now, sorry for that, we say 4,875 I equals 4,875 minus 1,038 rand, 1,038.45. Then this gives us 3,836.55. We said no, it's not that one. We say 1,477.20 minus 1,038.45, which is the interest amount minus the interest for the first investment, because it went over the equal sign as I showed you before. So we get 438.75. Then after we divide here by 4,875, this cancels this, and we do the same thing. We divide by 4,875. Then our interest, don't forget to multiply by 100 at the end. Our interest will be 438.75 divided by 4,875. Then whatever we get, we multiply it by 100. It gives us interest as 8.99%, which is 99,385%. Now if we round off this to the whole number, it will give us 9%. If we round it off, it will give us 9%. And this will be per annum. Please don't forget to say per annum. Now that will be equivalent to 9% per annum. And if you have seen in the calculation that I've done, you get exactly 9%. The previous one where we just said 438.75 divided by amount invested, which is 1,950, times by 2.5. When we do this, we get exactly 9%, no rounding off. This one is the best one, and I prefer always that one. But obviously, look at the questions. If in your exam, are you given decimals or not? Then if there are decimals, make sure that you stick with the one that has decimals. If there are not decimals, you can still use the approach of the 9%, then after you are done and dusted. So now this will be how you calculate the interest on the second investment. Now we are looking at the next scenario that we are provided. The next scenario that we are provided is very more detailed and is preparing us for the next question. It says counting days. We are given the number of days in a period of a year from January up until December in the year that we don't know yet, but we're given the number of days. That means this is very likely that the interest will be calculated for a period that is in days. So we are likely to be calculating the number of days for the time the investment was invested. And that is, as I said to you, that preparing us for the bills of exchange. Now, let us continue on that note, looking at the calendar and knowing that we'll need it as soon as possible. It says a person borrowed 155.65, meaning 155 rand 65 cents on the 13th of May. That means it is somewhere there in the month of May, but on the 13th of May. Therefore now it will be 31 minus 13, so that we get to know the other days, which we call unexpired period. in bills of exchange. Now he borrowed this money on the 13th of May and paid back, there's an N there, and paid back 162.35. The question is, why would a person borrow 155 and end up paying 162? That means there must be interest that this person was charged, and the interest will be the difference between the amount he borrowed and the total amount that he paid back later on. So it will be 162.35 minus 155.65. That means the interest amount that he was charged, the amount that he was charged, it is 6 rand 70 cents. Let me just verify that. It is 155.65 minus 162.35. Then this is 6 rand 70 cents, which is the amount that he was charged as interest. So our I is there already. And it says he paid back this on the 9th of November. That means in November, in that month, he made the payment, and the borrowing took place on the 13th of May. So we need to calculate the days from from the 14th of May. That means we exclude the 13th day that he borrowed the money. From May up until this 9th of November, we need to calculate the number of days starting in the month of May, knowing that the interest that he was charged over the period, which is our I, is equal to 6 rand 70 cents. Now let us calculate the days. What do? We say May has how many days? 31. 31 minus 13. We don't include the date in which he borrowed money, meaning 18 days this gentleman would have paid interest for the month of May. Then obviously for the month of June, it will be all the 30 days, July all the 31 days, August all the 31 days, September all the 31 days, October all the 31 days, November only 9 days because he paid it on the 9th day of the month of November. So this is 31. I don't know why I'm saying 31 here. This is only 9 days. So now we need to be counting from 18 days in the month of May that were left, plus 30 days in the month of June, plus 31 days in July, plus 31 days in August, plus 30 days in September, and plus 31 days in October, and plus 9 days in November. This gives us a total of 180 days. That means this person borrowed money over the period of 180 days. Now that means our N is in days, but we need to look at the interest rate. If the interest rate is in days, then there is no problem, but if the interest rate is per annum, we need to change our N into an annual equivalent, or in the same time frame as the interest. Then the question says he paid back on the 9th of November in the same year. Therefore now, what annual, take note, what annual rate of interest? What annual rate of interest? Meaning the interest is per annum. Therefore now, in other words, this means we need to calculate our N based on the number of days in a year. And they normally say, assume a year has 365 days. Why? Because we can say that February is ending on the 28th, so this will be 365 days in a year, except when February ends on the 29th, where it becomes 366. So now we are required to calculate the annual rate of interest, which is the interest rate. So we know that our I is 6 rand 70. So we can use our formula that says interest equals I over amount invested times by our N. Very easy. So now we just do our substitution. We say our interest, it is 6 rand 70, and the amount that was invested, it is 155.65. Then we multiply this by 180 days out of 365 days in a year. Don't forget to multiply by 100 because we are looking for the percentage. Then we say 6 rand 70 divide open brackets 155.65 times by 180 divide by 365. Then we close our brackets, and this gives us 0.8 something multiplied by 100. Then we get to 8.72863% per annum, because we're required to calculate it per annum. So we have calculated that interest, which was a requirement. Now they made everything simpler for us, and once again they said 1 year is equal to 365 days. Thank you guys. With that, I have clarified yourself in everything that I wanted to explain. Let us meet in the next 3 questions, and these are very lovely 3 questions. I will be doing 1.8, 1.9, and 1.10 in the next session, more especially 1.10 with the unknown of X there, and the amount that was invested being the unknown. Then we'll deal with these 3 examples combined. Then after, there will be the last one in terms of the examples in simple interest topic. Thank you very much.